your client might not be able to get to the summit and you're going to need to walk down with them.
Right.
And you don't get to achieve the summit. But what you have achieved is you've helped them through a fantastic experience, whether they're, on paper successful at getting the goal or not. They were successful in having some sort of transformative experience out there with you. And that's what it's really all about.
This is episode 1080. Colby Brokvist, 20 years of guiding adventures all over the world. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I did it again. I had Grok write a podcast intro for our guest today. And I do this just kind of for fun. And sometimes they're slightly corny. But Colby said that it was okay that I could read this one. So I'm going to read this one and we'll see how it goes. Welcome to today's episode of the Adventure Sports Podcast, where we dive into the world of adventure and exploration. We're thrilled to have Colby Brokvist, a seasoned adventure guide and expedition leader with over 2 decades of experience leading transformative journeys across the globe. And I want to interject here. He has also written a book on how to be a guide. And the book is called The Professional Guide's Handbook. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But a lot of what Colby's passion is helping people that would really like to make a lifestyle and a business and a career out of doing what they love and helping other people to experience it too. He wants to make them successful because it's not always that easy. But here we go. I'm going to read a little bit more. From the icy fjords of Greenland, that sounds like fun, to the rugged peaks of Patagonia, Colby's guided trips for top outfits like the Natural Habitat Adventures and Lindblad Expeditions, earning him a reputation as a master of backpacking, mountaineering, sea kayaking, and wildlife safaris. As a certified senior polar guide, chair of the Polar Tourism Guides Association, and author of the Professional Guide's Handbook, Colby brings a wealth of expertise and a passion for conservation to the table. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about leading epic adventures, fostering connections with nature, and promoting sustainable travel. Okay, that was a mouthful, but it kind of got it all in.
Yeah, there's a paragraph to sum up a career.
Colby, you have done a lot of things, obviously, and welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast.
Oh, thanks, Curt. It's great to be here. Longtime listener and fan, and it's quite a treat. I think now that you're over 1,000 episodes, and
oh yeah,
I've made it into the chair.
Well, I'm so glad to have you. You know what I'm really curious about, and I'm going to tell the listeners out there. I already told Colby this. This is a really difficult interview to do. When you find someone that's been doing something like this for 20 years, and you have thousands of stories. Sometimes it's kind of challenging to zero in to just enough to fill up the time we have. So I don't want to just skim the top. We're going to have to do a deep dive here and there, but give us just a little bit of background. Guiding for 20 years. What the heck, man? What was that like?
Well, yeah, it's fantastic, right? It's, I try to think of it as living the life of adventure, and adventure shows up in a lot of ways when you're professionally working in the outdoors. Sometimes it's what we experience with our friends, around the campfire or when we gain the summit. And sometimes adventure is figuring out operational inefficiencies and problems or dealing with challenging guests. And, we can talk stories about all kinds of stuff. I had at a welcome dinner one time, leading a wildlife photography trip in Yellowstone. I had a woman drugged by the police with out of the welcome dinner, right the beginning of the welcome dinner, kicking and screaming. And that's how we started our trip.
Wow.
So even these like little social gatherings at the beginning of the trip can be adventurous.
So you've done a variety of different types of guiding, which the intro kind of highlighted some of it. Mm-hmm. But can you just go through the bullet points of the types of trips that you guide? And then I'd like to hear which ones you prefer.
Yeah. So, at the beginning of my guiding career, I started as a backpacking and mountaineering guide.
Okay.
So I did a little bit of rock climbing, a little bit of like kind of light alpinism, mountaineering sort of stuff in California, Sierra Nevada mountains, and then a lot of backpacking trips. And I ended up being pretty good logistically at the longer expedition stuff, like leading trips on the John Muir Trail for 3 weeks, backpacking trips, and crossing Yosemite through the high country and the back country there. And because I have a degree in environmental sciences, I could also fill in the time and make things interesting and connect
Right.
people to the places that we were going. And then that opened the door, because you're doing a lot of seasonal work, especially when you start guiding, if not forever. And so then I had the opportunity to start leading some nature and wildlife trips that were based on conservation travel. And then over time, I was filling in the gaps with like some more rock climbing guiding. I did a whole bunch of sea kayak guiding for a while during the winters and in the northern hemisphere. And then ultimately, kind of all my technical skills and different adventure sport skills were married with all the conservation travel. And so today I lead polar expeditions, primarily to a camp up in East Greenland, and then sailing trips down in Antarctica. And those are
Wow.
my primary gigs now.
All of that sounds so fun.
Yeah.
Where do we start? Oh man. So what have you found to be the most challenging, most rewarding, your favorite, those sorts of things?
Yeah, great questions. In terms of the most fun, I really like where I'm at now in my career. The trips that I'm doing marries a lot of technical skills, subject knowledge, people skills, and when I'm guiding in these polar regions on these very remote trips and expeditions, it really feels like I'm using my whole skill set, and it's
Okay.
quite engaging for me, and I really enjoy that. Challenges for me is time away from friends and family,
Sure.
and that can be mitigated by groups of just really fun, appreciative, curious people, and it can be exacerbated when I have guests that are challenging and are maybe on the wrong trip or there for the wrong reasons or don't quite fit in socially.
Mm.
So that can be a big challenge. Those group dynamic things can be a big, especially with, we're on these big adventure travel trips. They can last for a few weeks, and so people get very real as they become emotionally and physically fatigued.
Oh yeah.
And so a lot of things come out when we're out there, even in these group settings. And that's one of the things, that's a guiding skill, a leadership skill to figure out. But it does present a pretty significant challenge. And then rewarding, you asked for, is I feel very privileged to work for some conservation based travel companies, and we do a lot of raising of money for organizations like the World Wildlife Fund and supporting local as well as kind of regional or even global conservation initiatives. So anything from marine protected areas down in Antarctica to I've been involved with them for wolf and wildlife preservation and hunting regulations in the tri-state area and the Rocky Mountains and on and on. And that's really rewarding for me to connect travelers to the things that are important sort of environmentally and socially and economically to the destinations they're traveling to.
Okay, Colby, I'm going to throw out just a snippet of my philosophy about nature and
Hmm.
conservation. And you can tell me I'm full of it or you can agree, but I'd like to hear your commentary on it. My personal belief is humans are not a scourge on the environment. We're a part of the environment. And as such, we have a stewardship responsibility that we cannot fulfill if we don't know nature. If we don't understand the ecosystem, if we haven't experienced it enough, then we're probably not going to do a very good job of making wise decisions and defending it in a way that takes care of our beautiful environment around the world and the natural resources that we have. So I'm very much pro human go to nature. I'm not human stay out of nature, which some people are these days. I'm human go into the environment, connect with it, build a relationship with it, and then you can better make wise decisions on how we can care for those resources. That's me. Now, shoot holes in that. What do you think?
There's no holes to shoot. That it's brilliant. David Attenborough had a famous quote just about that same sentiment, right? Where people need to experience things and develop emotional and understanding connections of like understanding as well as connections with feelings in order to want to protect places. And so
Mm,
travel is a wonderful vehicle for that. And for guides, all right, so here, let's step back for a minute. So
okay.
imagine you're a traveler and you show up to a new place, you're traveling on your own and there's so much happening and everything is new,
Oh
and
yeah.
you're trying to make sense out of the logistics of moving around and where are you going to eat, and maybe there's new culture, maybe there's new safety considerations like what I experience in the polar environments. We're trying to always help people
Right.
understand all the new safety things because your life skill set just doesn't apply in these places that you travel to. And then to make sense out of all that and then try to have some kind of meaningful emotional attachment or do a deeper dive into understanding things or connecting with local people, it's extremely challenging. And so travel on our own can be very, very rewarding in a lot of
Right.
ways. To balance that, traveling with someone like a professional guide uh, can be of high value because the guide can help steer. You can say, hey, here's an obvious thing that's really interesting, but here are a lot of unobvious things that are really interesting. And let me tell you about them. And let me introduce you to these people. And here are some things that relate to what you're experiencing that are part of this bigger conservation picture. So in Antarctica, for instance, we experience whales and seals and penguins, and they're intrinsically tied to the krill fishery.
Oh
And
yeah.
then there's an industry associated around that that's affecting wildlife success when it comes to their breeding. And so they're looking to create marine protected areas. A person just visiting on their own, if you were able to sail on your own yacht down to Antarctica, you would say, wow, look at all these animals. This is amazing. But with the guide present, we can connect people to all of those things. And so it develops this deeper connection and a deeper appreciation to place. And I think this is what you're talking about, Curt. And then if we can expose people to those things, then through their understanding and emotional connection, they want to see those places protected. And then if you have a prolific traveler and they're traveling all around the US or they're traveling all around the world, then you start gaining more and more perspective on how all of these natural systems are connected and the importance of conservation worldwide. Because what we realize is that things, that are happening in other people's backyards do affect us as well.
Yeah. Well, that's super cool. And Colby, you mentioned that you had an environmental science degree. I'm sure that that helps a lot. And not that it's a prerequisite for being a guide, but I think it probably makes you a very good guide. I mean, at least for someone like me. So I'm so darn curious
Yeah.
about everything that I see, and I love it. But if there's someone like you that can say, actually, this is what's going on here, and that's what this means to the ecosystem. I mean, that would be so cool.
Yeah, I think so. And, that's actually how I started in this career. Uh, a story to go along with that would be I decided or had the idea, I guess, to become a guide when I was backpacking the Appalachian Trail. So in 2000, I went from Georgia to Maine on the AT, was out there for 5 months and 5 days, and I was traveling with my buddy. He was a biologist, trained anyway in school. Neither one of us had a job yet, and we were right out of college. And I had a geologic and environmental sciences degree. And together we were collecting plants and making salads at night and
There
having
you go.
fresh food in the Mid Atlantic states. And we knew things about wildflowers and ecology and this sort of thing. And so that as you got to know each other out on the trail, because the Appalachian Trail is a very, very social place. We had a lot of conversations with our fellow hikers just about nature, and then we kind of became the nature guys. So if
There you
people
go.
people had questions, they'd be like, "Oh, what was this thing that I saw? Or what's happening here?" Or like a big one was always like, "Oh, what's the difference between a national forest and national park?" As we move, from land entity to
Yeah.
entity, and it's like, "Oh, well, here's what they are and why, and the philosophy and ethos behind, the different departments and that run them." And so at some point at a campfire in Virginia, there was a couple, and the gentleman was like, it's really fun to travel with you guys. You should consider doing this. when you get done with the trail. And I had never thought about that before. For me, like guiding was, oh, I'm gonna take people rock climbing, or I'm gonna take people skiing, and these are people that can't do it without me. I'm gonna enable them to do this thing that they can't do as a guide,
Right.
and I'm gonna drag them to the summit, or I'm gonna do this thing, right? And it turns out that's not at all, or how about this? It's that's a very small portion of what guiding is really about. And yeah, so that was it. It was my degree and that knowledge that led me into guiding, and then under the guise of backpacking and rock climbing and sailing and kayaking and all these things, I found that I could help people connect with nature.
A theme of mine for the last several weeks, Colby, has been if I don't go out, I don't make the memory. I don't have the experience. I don't enlarge my life. If
Hmm.
I stay home and watch TV or, fill in the blank, whatever your favorite thing is, then I'm really missing out on opportunities. And I've heard your or parallels to your story several times. People saying, I went out and I did this thing and it opened up a door I never thought of. I made a connection and now look, here I am. Had no idea when I graduated from college I'd be doing this, but look how it turned
Yeah,
out. You see what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, when I got done with college, my parents helped put me through college, in large part, and my dad even took on a second job. When I got out of school, I did the Appalachian Trail, and I worked for like 10 months or something, in the environmental field. And here's to this kid that wanted to be outdoors all the time and enjoy nature, and then suddenly I was doing surveys for wetlands that were going to be destroyed, or I
Oh,
was in
yeah.
doing air quality studies in the city in Boston. And I was like, oh man, the environmental industry is based around construction and government bureaucracy, and I became really disenchanted by that. So that was part of why I went and hiked the Appalachian Trail, but I also just sort of turned my back on all that and went out to Colorado and was trying to be a rock climbing guide.
Yeah.
And my dad didn't like that. Like
Where were you guiding in Colorado?
well, in Colorado, I was actually helping. So I was working at a rock climbing gym,
Okay.
and just doing little, low level kind of instruction, for climbing. And then I was also working full time at REI. And so I started helping with the REI Adventures programs. They would have weekend outings.
All right.
And so I was like one of their little like tour leaders, We go up to Rocky Mountain National Park and go snowshoeing for a few hours or something. And then I was taking classes, for my medical exams and some rock
Yep.
climbing rescue stuff, and just trying to build up a resume so I could get hired and stand out as not just somebody that loved rock climbing, but I actually had some skills and experience. Oh, that's how I got hired. But yeah, and so my dad was like, "Wait a minute. Like what was all this money we spent on school, and you have this degree?" I was the first person in either side of my family to graduate from college, and I it, you know, ostensibly sort of turned my back on the whole thing. But in the end, it all came around because yeah, I think if we follow our passions, then those doors are going to open up for us. And I have a passion for nature and for learning and teaching and for recreating in the outdoors and for shared experiences. And I was able to combine my passion for climbing and backpacking with my knowledge, of environmental sciences, and it all worked out. And I think to your point, if you put yourself out there and you do those things that bring you joy and you find reward in, and you can find community around, then it's going to work for you. And
Mm,
guiding, it can be intimidating for some people, especially because, if we look at guiding today, people want to get in because I love rock climbing, or I love skiing, I love rafting,
yeah,
and I
sure.
just want to do it all of the time, But if you actually have a passion for being out there with other people, then you can turn it into a lifetime career. If you're doing it only because you like it and you think it'd be fun to make it, make it a job for 3 or 4 years, then great. If you want it to be a career, you need a real passion for people, and then you could start learning some more skills like leadership and professional risk management and what guest expectations are and how to meet those and all of those things, and you can really turn it into a real career.
That's well said. I've talked to several people, Colby, who said, don't turn your passion into a job. And I think,
Yeah.
well, maybe. The jury is out. Sometimes it works and
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't. But I've heard so many people say, yeah, you think you're just going to get to do what you love all the time. The next thing you know, it turns into work and then you don't love it anymore. And then you've written the book on
Yeah.
this literally.
Yeah.
And what you just said was you got to love the people you're doing it with. If you're not enjoying doing it with people, so fill us in on that. If someone wants
Yeah.
to be a climbing guide, but they're not sure about the people side, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, my advice is keep your passion as your passion and find another job that you're passionate about
Oh,
and that kind of work, and then be able to go recreate on your own. If you don't love people and the shared experiences for people and providing those experiences for other people, not for yourself, then guiding's probably not for you. Uh, but if you're passionate about all of that, then guiding could be the best job ever in the world.
nice.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful distinction. And I think you're the first person who's actually made it for me, who said, no, 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 it's really about the people.
Well, it has to be, right? We're providing experiences, we're delivering adventure for other people. They're paying for our services. And there are a few different reasons why they might hire a guide. It's not, like we said earlier, just for the enabling aspects of it,
Yeah.
but all of the enrichment and camaraderie that comes along with it. And self-actualization and transformation. And we can help people, usher people through these experiences and help them find connections, understand themselves, the world around them, like more than they might be able to on their own. And so it's really rewarding that way, but it's about the people. And at the end of the day, like in the book, one of the things that I say in the book is, it's not about you reaching the summit. Like if you're going to be a mountaineering guide because you want to go climb Everest and
Yeah.
you can get paid to go do it, that's the wrong way, because at the end of the day, your client might not be able to get to the summit and you're going to need to walk down with them and
Right.
you don't get to achieve the summit. But what you have achieved is you've helped them through a fantastic experience, whether they're, on paper successful at getting the goal or not. They were successful in having some sort of transformative experience out there with you. And that's what it's really all about.
Okay. This
At the
it's
end
time
of
for
the
a
day,
story.
whether anything can stop us
Oh,
from
absolutely.
from from achieving these like goals on paper, right? So, but if our real objectives are to have fun with each other and learn from each other and sharing these experiences, then every trip's a success. That's the magic.
Ah, that's so cool. So, Colby, tell us a story. Don't name names if you don't want to, but
Uh,
I want to hear a time that you had a guest experience. So, give us the setting. Where were you? What were you doing? And what were one of these times where you really had to pull out your people skills?
yeah, people skills. I had a trip, Kurt, in Antarctica one time. So I lead trips on these sailboats. There's 7 guests. There's 3 crew and me as the expedition leader, and that's it. So really small groups, and not everybody would know each other. They're not
Yeah.
chartering the whole boat. People can buy a cabin aboard the sailboat, and so we had a woman in this case that was on her own, and then there was a couple, and there were some other people on the boat, but they're the key characters. And the woman and the couple and the single woman didn't get along, like at
Uh-oh.
all. Just very very different personalities, different senses of humor. One liked to have some wine at the end of the night. The other one didn't drink at all. They had just very different outlooks and expectations on everything, top to bottom. And it boiled up after a few days, and you could see it coming. And I was trying all the like little social things of this and that, and let's try to I'll get along and sharing experiences and have celebrations together, and like we're all doing it together. But these 2 ladies were kind of not having it. Like they sort of wanted each other to know they didn't like each other, and there was a lot of rub. And the sailboat is just way too small of an experience for
Oh
that.
yeah.
And so I worked with the behind the scenes with the mate on the trip and was like, hey, because we have two Zodiacs and we're going to go do some cruising, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, those two ladies and then the husband, they're coming on the boat with me today, and you take the rest. So when we're organizing everybody and they're all jumping in boats, these ladies can't go to different boats. They're coming with me. Uh, and
Okay.
and so we hatched that plan, and I took a little bit of a gamble because what we were doing was we were actually looking for leopard seals. It was in December, early season in Antarctica, and you can in this one particular bay you can usually find a lot of leopard seals just because the way the food works and the way that um, their birthing sort of patterns have been just finishing up at the end of the spring, and so I knew there was a pretty good chance we were going to find leopard seals. It's a big highlight of the trip to find one of the largest carnivores on the planet
Sure.
down there. And in the setting is huge glaciated mountains with enormous icebergs floating over. So we're going to cruise around through all these icebergs, this beautiful setting. We're going to see other wildlife, and we're searching for this leopard seal that I was reasonably confident we could find. So I know that this excursion is going to be something really special. And it came at the time right when sort of these ladies were about to unravel the whole
Oh,
social fabric of the trip, right?
you are a brave man, Colby. I can tell you that right now.
I don't know. I was desperate, I think. So anyway, we all get in the boat, and then we go out, and I'm like, hey, this and that, the other day, and I start making them. I'm like, look at this beautiful icebergs, and I make them get together, and I'm like taking pictures of them on my phone. I'm like, oh, look how much fun we're having, and I'm like making them kind of do things together, and I'm having the conversations about things that are happening out there, and everybody is involved together in the conversation. At some point, we find the leopard seal. It worked out, and so here's
Nice.
this enormous trip highlight and the whole thing. And so then they have some pictures on their phones, and so I took pictures of their pictures with them, and they're all thing. We had this big celebration, and so I brought everybody on that little boat together, and we all had a big hug. And I said, "This is great! Like, oh wow, we all did it. We did it together." And then a little bit before we got back on the boat, I just kind of turned the engine down, and we just floated for a minute. And I was like, this is the experiences that you came for today, weren't they? And everybody's like, yeah, it was amazing. And they each kind of shared a little bit about what happened today. And I was like, good. I'm like, so do you think something to the effect of, so do you think we could all agree that when we get on the sailboat again and we're back in the social environments aboard our very small ship with our other friends that are in the other boat, that we can recognize that we're all here for the same shared experiences, and the trip needs to be about that more than about anything else that's happening on the ship?
Mm.
And and they're like, oh. And that's all I really needed to say was just a simple sentiment like that, and they were all like, yes. And they, you could tell that they knew they were being called out for their behavior, but it was a bit of an indirect way to do it, and it was in a celebratory fashion of just, let's remember what we're all here for, and we all share these same inherent reasons for being here. And so it worked out. And those ladies, I don't think, talked very much at all during the trip for the rest of the trip. It's a 17-day long trip, and that was near the beginning.
Wow.
And like they didn't really talk or interact, but they stepped back
Mm.
from the confrontation and let everything else just go. And everyone had a really fun time in the end. But it was definitely borderline for a little while there.
The idea that one personality conflict could really diminish a trip for the whole group.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And that's a
Yeah.
little bit terrifying.
It is. One of the things that I'm able to do on these expedition trips that helps alleviate that is we have formal welcome gatherings. And sometimes I even have like a little audio visual, not audio, but a visual thing, a little PowerPoint presentation or something where we show some maps and I have some schedules and some things. But I actually put a slide up there, Curt, about expedition behavior now.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and it's just like this is what this means to me, and this is why. And I tell some stories of, it's mostly in polar environments again. So, I'm like, we have this polar expedition and blah blah blah, and this is why they were successful, because they all got together and they were all positive, and like how many how many successful expeditions do you know about where nobody got along and they all fought and the whatever? Like, no, those are the ones that fall apart. No,
Right.
so which one do you want? And here's how we can have good expedition behavior. So it's really good. It was more challenging when I was leading backpacking trips earlier on, and I knew we were going to be out there for 3 weeks. And it's a little bit more. It had to be a little bit more organic, and just at some point, like at a lunch break or at a campfire, we'd kind of bring up some of these ideas, but it's a little harder to talk about directly, I think, on some of those trips.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been encouraging people for many, many years, decades before I ever had a podcast, that one of the beautiful benefits of adventure is discovering something about yourself. It's being challenged and learning how to overcome the challenge and finding out, whoa, I can do this, or I'm not good at that, but
Yeah.
to really learn something from the experience itself, that's one of the main reasons for adventure. It's why we push ourselves. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that over and over again.
Sure. Yes.
So is that one of your
Self-actualization.
objectives when you go on one of these guided trips? Is like, I want to see what people learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Self-actualization. So I talk a lot when I'm doing guide training about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Sure.
So for listeners maybe that aren't familiar with it, you could start with kind of basic human needs. If you imagine a big pyramid, where like, oh, you need to be fed and you need to sleep. And, then you get into needs like safety. But then as you move up towards the pyramid, there's this sense of belonging and connection,
Mm-hmm.
of understanding yourself and your place in the world. You move up into things like creativity, appreciation for nature, spirituality, and eventually you hit the sort of self-actualization things where you hit some sort of spiritual transcendence or inspired to do service or something, and this is where we start thinking about people's worldviews change, or they want to become an ambassador or an advocate for something. But it doesn't have to be for something external. It can be for internal, right? So the
Oh
idea of
yeah.
self-actualization, and they learn something about themselves or the world around them, is sort of the line that I always throw out. And that's our ultimate kind of goal as guides, is to help people achieve that. And for me as a guide, I'm always thinking about that hierarchy and of like, okay, like if I want to teach people about something, like, are they ready to hear this? Like, do they need a restroom break? Do we need more snacks? You know what I mean? And then when we hit these peak moments, once they've kind of come to understand and experience some things, then we have those things. It's like, well, we did achieve something significant together, and be able to celebrate that and then reflect on those things of what does that mean to us? How is our understanding or perspective or like whatever it might be? Um, how does that change? And so we see it in adventure sports a lot with people, don't we? I think is what you're getting at, and where people in a group setting with some support or a guide fulfilling like a more of a counselor, sort of coaching role rather than an enabling role. Like, here's the gear, and I'm going to bring you up, and I'm going to keep you safe. It's just like, hey, you can do this, and here's how, and let me tune your technique up a little bit, and like don't like. You might be lacking confidence, but I have confidence in you, and let's do it together. And the whole group's here to support each other, and then we're all able to achieve something. And they can be really powerful to be in a group setting with someone like a guide that you don't have to sort of think about some of the safety or operational aspects, and you can just think about what you're doing and pushing your own self and achieving things that are very possible for you, but maybe it's the first time, and or just more fun to do in a group setting. And so it's really rewarding to be able to provide those self-actualization moments for people.
You've had 20 years to enjoy witnessing people in this journey of self-discovery. I mean, it's just little snippets of their life that I bet you've seen some real breakthroughs.
Yeah, real breakthroughs, and some of it is, again, it's in like confidence in people, the things that they're able to achieve, and like there's been a lot of crying over the years, like
Oh, were you
I
the one during the crying?
sometimes, yeah, yeah, for real, like it can be real emotional, and but yeah, it's for me, and just because my career has been a little bit diverse in terms of guiding, yeah, some of the like really like physical adventure sports oriented things are more about this kind of the internal struggle and overcoming these things. And I mean, I had a guy that had a brain aneurysm,
Wow.
and this huge big recovery, and it was life changing for him. And he had always been a backpacker, and he came and he joined a trip with me, and we were able to go do a big kind of backpacking, off trail backpacking route together. And yeah, we the old mountain guiding company in California, the owner had some ties to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society,
Mm,
and we did a bunch of work for helping people that had been training for a whole year as a fundraising effort to go and maybe climb Half Dome or hike to the top of Yosemite Falls. And like, I mean, we cried. If we cried once every day, like we cried 10 times,
right.
like people were there for themselves in their own cancer journey or some loved one that was close to them. And they were, you know, yeah, it was a big demonstration of all of the efforts that go into sort of beating something and overcoming something. And then they were fundraising for all this money to then carry that forward and help other people. And it's really, really rewarding. Now today, most of what I'm doing is in the nature and adventure space. And so to see people donating money towards, ocean preservation or to, the wolf biology program in Yellowstone. Yeah, it's really something.
Wow. So I hear the self-actualization in your voice as you're sharing that. I can tell that was an
Yeah.
experience, you
Yeah, I
know?
think so. And this is the rewards that come along with being a guide, like I'm there with people on their own journeys, and that becomes part of my own journey, right? Like I've played a hand in things indirectly, but it's also inspired me to be more of a direct advocate for things as
Oh
well.
yeah.
I learned so much through other people on the trips, right? People from all walks of life doing all sorts of things. And there's some common thread of interest, but so wide ranging what people bring to the table. And so to see the world through their eyes and hear their questions about what we're experiencing and about all of the good work they're doing at home. Yeah, it's very inspiring.
That's been one of the beautiful things about doing the Adventure Sports podcast. It's
Yeah.
I get to ask people questions and learn from them. It's such an honor. It's so beautiful.
Over a
But
thousand different people with different perspectives
oh
on
yeah,
the outdoors and adventure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
something.
really, really, really special. But I know that everyone wants to hear the deep story, the good story. I want to hear the time you got it. Not maybe you didn't get a group in trouble, but the weather, something went drastically sideways, and you had to get the group in and back out again. I mean, there's got to be
Yeah.
a story or two like that.
There's a few, Curt. A really good one was, it's two parts. It's
Okay.
two parts. So this was on the John Muir Trail years ago, and I had these guys, and they hired mules. So the mules would carry the stuff from place to place, which is in the historic tradition of the Sierra and all the trail
All right.
building and everything that happens in California Sierra. So yeah, with a nod, to the 1890s, we were doing this mule trip and then hiking from camp to camp. And we were at Palisades Lake in the middle of the summertime. It was like August, right? And we're camped exactly at 11,000 feet at the lake.
All right.
And we woke up in the morning and there was a couple inches of fresh snow.
Ooh.
And it was not in the forecast. And this is long enough ago that, we didn't have a GPS that could give you weather forecasts and things.
Sure.
So we had already been out there a week, and it was like, I don't know, like, and then the storm comes, and the mules didn't like it. And they got away. Uh,
Uh-oh.
yeah, and so somehow they got themselves away. The mule packer slept through it, as one does, because they're long and exciting days, and he slept and he just didn't hear the bell, and they left. And so they went down the Golden Staircase, and there's a huge meadow system below that, and we're like, well, they probably just went down there, and we're gonna find them there grazing. So I went to attending to the kitchen and making breakfast for the guys, and then the packer threw on his cowboy boots and went hiking down the trail a few
Uh-oh.
miles, and he came back hours and hours and hours later, just starving, ready for a late lunch. And he's like, they went home, and he tracked them on the trail. They didn't even stop for food. He tracked them on the trail, and they were just walking home.
No
And
way.
yeah, and so we're there. We are. We're at 11,000 feet. We're on the trail, and all our gear is for mule packing, not for
Right.
backpacking. We just have small little day packs. And the guys that were on the trip, it was a group of guys, 5 of them, that had hired me, and they were like, "Well, let's just throw our stuff in our little tiny backpacks, and like we could probably still go for 2 days, and let's go to this new place. We can't be on the John Muir Trail anymore because they got to get out at some point. But they're like, we figure we can carry a couple days of food. Let's go here. We'll do a different exit. We'll go to an area that we hadn't planned on going to, and all of this. And it just didn't sit right with me. I was like, man, like the weather is not good. The conditions aren't great. We're gonna have to leave some gear behind. Now these guys want to go like kind of scrappy alpine style.
Yeah.
They want to go to a new place that we hadn't planned to be and make it up as we go. And with poor weather. And I didn't know most of these guys. I knew, I think, one of them. And I was like, I don't know. It never sat right with me. And so in the end, I had to talk them out of it and be like, look, I think we need to do 1 day out instead of trying to do 2 or 3 days and like make up something as we go. And it was just operationally and safety risk management wise, there was just so many dominoes that were piled up.
Yeah.
I was just like, there's no way all of this is going to work out, and we're going to end up in a worse situation with fewer resources somewhere where no one expects us to be, and it just didn't line out in my head. And so we ended up throwing a bunch of stuff for a really long day in our day packs, a bunch of food and some emergency stuff, and probably some small bottles of wine that they had. And we ended up bailing out of the east side of the Sierra, and it was fun. We ended up at a hotel that was probably haunted, and we had a big steak dinner, and everybody looks back at it, and it was kind of funny, even though it was really difficult for them at the time. And it was one of the biggest first big decisions, like really significant decisions I had to make as a leader. And it was, for years, I was like, I don't know, was that the right decision or was it not the right decision? We've actually used that as an example in like kind of risk management kind of workshops over the years with different guiding groups and things. And I guess I feel better about it because the guiding teams always end up doing what I did in bailing, even though it's not an obvious decision.
That's a tough
They
call to
always
make.
choose to. It's super tough.
Especially
but the second
because
part, sorry.
There's a group of people that have agreed on something, and you as a leader have to say, sorry, can't do that.
But they're agreeing on a brand new something that they just made up.
Right.
That there's no real
research,
plan
no one knows
around.
what they're getting into.
It was more of just like, hey, we have this time that we had allotted for something, and now we're going to go do this thing. But that thing was, like we said, like adding so many more dominoes. But we made the most of our time. It was great. But the second part of the story, Curt, is that then they came back next year, and we got back on. We doubled back a little bit on the trail so we could get over to the Palisades and then keep moving forward. The goal was then to finish up the John Muir Trail that next year. And it was great. But the funny part about this is, so I learned a little bit of lesson in risk management and being with mules and having extra resources in case the mules run away. Also we kind of learned that we work really well as a team, and those guys can put in a big effort. They were like physically very capable, and they're just like a positive, like, let's go do this, like rally kind of guys. And I knew after that last experience, I was like, here's a bunch of guys that I can count on. Like when we do make a decision, we're doing something, full commitment. This is what we're doing. And it made it fun, and there was no pouting. And it was great. I was like, all right, this is what we're doing now. And so knowing more about that group and having some extra risk management things in place, what happened to us the next year is that just before we got to Mount Whitney on one of the last passes there was so much snow left over from that year that the mules couldn't get through.
No way.
And we expected it and brought shovels. And me and the packer actually tried to shovel out. It was a couple 100 yards. We tried to shovel out the trail so the mules could go. But it was just too icy and nasty. And so we didn't want to put the animals in a position where they would break a leg or have harm or anything. And so we enacted the new contingency plan based on the previous year's experiences. And I had a bunch of medium-sized backpacks, and I had packed an extra camp stove and a couple small, portions of meals. And so we just transferred everything in to the small backpacks, and then we hiked the rest of it. And we hiked the last 3 days. So we didn't have the same problem with the mules this year that we had the year
Oh,
before.
wow.
And it was super cool. And yeah, so we made it happen the next year in different circumstances, but still having a problem, but overcame that challenge. So it was really neat. Yeah.
I bet everyone felt almost like doubly celebratory because, second attempt and we did it. Even though the mules couldn't make it, we did.
Well, that was it. And like it was we, like we
Yeah.
got better and we're doing this and we're a good team and like we're accomplishing our goals. And yeah, I mean, you think in terms of like all that like team building stuff and like Tuckman's group development, where you have forming, storming, norming, performing, like we
Yes.
just really got into that performing stage, after getting through all the storming stuff the year previous, and just everything was dialed in. And it's just like, you know what, no mules, no problem. Like, here we go. And we got to the top of Mount Whitney. They completed the entirety of the trail. It had been obviously in sections, but they completed the John Muir Trail that year, all together. And it was a huge success. It was so fun.
You know how frustrating it is for Coloradoans. I mean, you've been in Colorado for a while yourself to know that Mount Whitney is just a little taller than Elbert.
Sure.
It's almost like a football rivalry. Anyway, we'll move on from that. So, Colby, I've never been a guide, but I've taught a lot of friends and family, how to do these things. And so there's always a group that's less experienced, and I've always felt a sense of responsibility because supposedly I'm the one who has the experience and should be making the right call. And I'm just throwing this out here to say I have made the wrong call several times, and we've ended up in situations that were more challenging than we would have wanted, right? And never did we have any injuries or major problems, but I guess where I'm headed with this is risk management.
Yeah.
I always have the wanderlust. I want to go over the next ridge. I want to get to the summit. I don't want to stop now because that's the goal, and that can really get people in trouble. Can you address that? I mean, what should people be thinking when they're trying to assess risk and what the right decision is?
Yeah. So that's a huge question, right? There's books and whole courses on this. But some principles on risk management would be, you're not making decisions just for yourself when you're with a group, you're making them for the group, right? So each group member has to be thinking not only about their own abilities and desires and goals, but also of all of the other people, and recognizing what's appropriate to all the people that are together in the group. Another thing that, how about a couple other things that are really common traps? One of them is groupthink. And groupthink is when you have some kind of risk shift towards being more risky or far less risky than you can be. And it's a function of, like if you have a bunch of young men all together, then in a groupthink situation, you're probably going to make decisions that are more risky than they need to be. And that's shown in research studies.
It's a prefrontal cortex developmental issue.
Yeah, there's some testosterone related to it too. Yeah. If you have one woman in the group, then risk comes down.
Wow. Okay.
And there's some really interesting studies that show that. But it's not necessarily a gender thing. The principles stay, right? But the other thing that can happen is people are less willing to take a risk in a group setting. And this is more of an emotional thing because they're in fear of embarrassment or not performing as well as other people. And, so they don't have the ability to have that self-actualization. They take that off the table because they're like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to be embarrassed. So they don't try. And so there's no learnings from their experience. And so in a group setting, that risk can go one way or another. And so thinking about the balance of risk reward in a like right in the front of mind kind of way can be really valuable, I think, to understand like, hey, it can swing either way. How are we managing our own decision making right now? Are we giving ourselves opportunities for to be unsafe or for reward, or what might it be? Like, how is your decision affecting you? And then two other really, really common ones. One you alluded to is commitment. Like, oh, we set out to do this thing.
Summit fever.
We're gonna do this thing,
Right.
like what more decision is there to make? It's like, well, we have changing conditions and we have fatigue and so ran out of snacks a while ago, and all of these things that play into like, hey, this is maybe not a good decision anymore. Things aren't, there's too many dominoes that have been put up, and we can't overcome all of those things, and so we should not commit to that goal. And a good way around that is asking yourself reasons to not go. Because when we're in these things and we're so psyched for these things that we've agreed we're going to go do, it's like, well, here's all the reasons we can go do the thing. But if you stop for a minute and think, all right, what are the reasons, the real reasons why we shouldn't do this thing? It adds a bit of analytical decision making and objectivity to the actual decision, and you can be a little more thoughtful rather than emotional about the decision. And the last really common one I would throw out there is familiarity, where, oh, don't worry, I've been here and done this a million times before. It's going to be fine. Well, again, the conditions, your group members, whatever it might be, are different today than what you've experienced in the past. And so just basing a decision on past successes is not a good way to make a decision. Yeah.
Well, I threw that out there because sometimes we have to. I interviewed John Fielder many years ago, and I asked him a question about when things went wrong and what you learned from it, so maybe you can help someone else from getting into trouble. And he goes, that's not the way it works. He goes, you have to get in trouble and get yourself out sometimes. That's how we learn. We're not smart enough to have the foresight, but what you're actually saying, Colby, is that people can have foresight if it's a part of the awareness, part of the plan, And I have started hikes up difficult peaks when the conditions were questionable, and I would try to set the objective for the group. I was like, this isn't about the summit today. We're going to go on a hike, and we're going to see great things and experience great things. And whenever it starts to look sketchy, then we're going to come back, and we're going to have great experiences and do great things. If for some reason things allow us to hit the summit, well, that's all bonus, but that's not our objective. And that usually has helped me a lot, at least, to approach something with that mindset.
Yeah. It's good to communicate that with groups, isn't it? Like, not just hold that in your own mind, but actually have that. And so as a professional guide, I guess one thing that I think we all miss in our own friend groups is actually just having a little team meeting about things, or debriefing after little bits of activities. And it's a regular part of my work and makes things function so well from a team dynamic and operational standpoint. But we don't often, myself included, we often don't do it when we're recreating with our friends. We just assume like, oh, okay, we're going to figure this thing out. And there's no distinct leader when you're out there with your friends. So it's like, oh, well, who's calling a meeting? But having a conversation about like, hey, what is our purpose today? What is our vision for achieving that purpose? What are the triggers for changing our plan? Like very specific triggers, like if we get here and it's this time, we're turning around, those sorts of things. And it's very standard practice in the guiding world, but it's not always applied in recreation. And maybe it's something to consider for people.
That's a good word, man. Thank you for that. I think people need to know that. I was on one 14er trip, and one of the guys I was with was very capable and very experienced and a little cocky about it. And he brought a friend who was very inexperienced.
Yeah.
And we got in a situation where his friend was not up to the task at hand, and his friend was coming undone. And so he was getting angry because his friend was holding him back, but it was becoming a dangerous situation. And I finally called it. And I said, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work. And it was a really difficult situation. And I wouldn't choose that for people either. It's not something I came home from that trip feeling good about, you know.
Yeah.
But it's important, I think, to have those expectations and that awareness in advance. It may have helped our trip to have been a little bit better memory, you know.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it, when it comes up in conflict, and it happens on
Oh yeah,
professional and unprofessional trip, not unprofessional,
sure,
but recreational and professional trips, right? That conflict arises. But yeah, all we can do is try to build communication pathways early on with each other and make sure that we're sharing similar expectations to try to get ahead of some of that emotional stuff. And then when we're in the field, and people are starting to feel a certain way or want to make different decisions, it just takes the edge off some of that emotion and adds a little bit of that analytical decision making back
right.
in. Like, hey, we talked about this earlier, and like my expectation was not this. You'll remember from our meeting earlier, that this is too much for me, and or this person's feeling this way. And so to be able to advocate for yourself or for somebody else that's in the group based on an earlier conversation, and then for the person that might want to push on that and escalate the conflict, they might be less willing to do that because it's like, oh yeah, we did all agree on that in a neutral
Yeah, I did
environment
agree to this.
earlier.
I'm
you
with
know?
you, man.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're running out of time, and as always, I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours. Maybe I should do long version shows where we do the Joe Rogan style and just don't stop until we're done. But that's not
Yeah.
today. So I wanted to make sure we mentioned the Waypoint Guide Academy again, and people can learn more information where?
Yeah, thanks, Curt, for that. Yeah, Waypoint Guide Academy online. There's also the Professional Guides Handbook. So if people are interested in upskilling, some of their adventure skill set, professionalizing that, whether or not you want to be a guide, there's some value to some of the risk management stuff we've talking about. But ideally, it's all designed for people that want to make adventure not just a lifestyle, but an actual career. And if you have passion for people and passion for adventure, then guiding might be for you. So check it out.
I wish I would have known about you about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It may have changed the course of my life.
Yeah.
Instead, I took out my own family, friends, nephews, anybody that wanted to go do the thing. That was always what we did recreationally on the side, and I worked the day job. But man, what an experience it would have been to have had someone like you who would have said, "No, there's a way to do both."
Yeah, there is a way. And now it's easy. All these soft skills, it's not like having to sit there with a rock climbing instructor and have your anchors inspected, My course is about 10 hours online for professional risk management, group dynamics, leadership, and interpretation, conservation communication. And you get a nice little certificate out of it. It's super accessible. It's pretty cheap, and it's the missing development layer. People ask me a lot of times, they're like, oh, how do I get hired as a guide? Like, I've been river rafting for 3 years and I'm so good at it and no one will talk to me about it. It's like, yeah, like, because river rafting guiding isn't about river rafting. It's about leading people, right? And that's what employers are looking for. And that's what Waypoint Guide Academy is all about.
And so that's just waypointguideacademy.com. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a complicated web address right now because of the course platform, to be honest with you. But if you just search on Google Waypoint Guide Academy, it's actually waypoint.mykajabi.com because the course is
okay.
is hosted by hosted on Kajabi. But anyway, Waypoint Guide Academy, that's all you need. You'll find me.
You'll find it. And the book, again, the Professional Guides Handbook.
Correct.
Amazon?
Yeah,
Elsewhere?
Amazon.
Where should we look?
Yeah. I mean, of course, if you want to buy it through Fulcrum Publishing, that's great for me as the author. I make a little bit more money on it.
Okay.
But Amazon is selling it pretty cheap right now, and that's a great place to purchase it. Yeah.
Well, Colby, thank you. I've enjoyed this immensely, and I keep on just imagining in my mind what it would be like to be guiding groups the way that you have for 20 years. The places you've been, the things that you've seen, the people you've interacted with. Um, it's enchanting to me. It's compelling. So congratulations.
Well, thank you, Curt. I know you're out there every day pounding the trail too. We all have our ways of engaging with nature and the outdoors and other people, and guiding's just one of them, but it's a great one. Yeah. Thanks for having me today. Yeah, I feel like I've been smiling this entire time. You have good questions, and it's nice to be with you here and in a community of people that appreciate adventure and what we're trying to do.
I love it. I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you very much. And for everyone out there, thanks for listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast today. And until the next time, get out there and have some fun.